Hello and welcome to the Incandescent Podcast. I'm Nathan Evans, and for this month's Salon in Your Sitting Room, I'm joined again by Justin David.
Hello everyone, lovely to be here.
So no podcast in May.
No.
Because we were busy preparing for our queer poetry soirée.
Well, that was fantastic, wasn't it great?
That was at Stoke Newington Literary Festival.
Yeah, just round the corner at the Mildmay Club.
And I've never...
Is that your first time?
I've been there once before, about 20 years ago. First time I've ever done a show.
I've been there a few times. I saw Lorraine Bow in there about 20 years ago when she sang the
Crumble song.
The Crumble song, yeah. But I'd never had the chance to have a really good look around, and the amazing spaces there, the glitter curtain and the vintage wallpaper and all the paint that's kind of things that have been painted over and over and over, and the paint's all crusted up, but complete with a mirror ball as well.
Complete with a mirror ball, of course, and new audience, lots of new faces in the audience.
Great to have new people come to an incandescent show.
Yeah, and it was sold out. Actually,
I think we did pretty good. Yeah, it's a pretty good show.
So if you couldn't join us for that, you're in luck, because we recorded some of it. And we're going to share a few tidbits in this podcast. So this is the poem I opened with. It's in its original musical form as a track on my debut album, Alienathan. Recorded on a 4-track in my bedsit in 2000, reworked in lockdown and released finally in 2020. So this is Well Worn.
Trying to find a boyfriend is like trying to buy new jeans. No matter how good they seem, there's always something wrong with them. This one's too grey, this one's too green, this one's too dirty, this one's too clean, this one's too wide, this one's too thin, this one's too neat and this too frayed at the seams. I've had a drink, there's not much light. I walk along the rail, I think that one's alright. I pick him out, I'll try him on. He seems to fit, I'll take him on. He's rumbled on the floor, and I think maybe he should go back to the store. But men are like jeans, if at first they don't quite fit, the more you wear them, the more comfortable they get.
That was Well Worn, and now back to Stokey Lit Fest. Our first bold poet was Espars.
Oh, they were great. They were great.
Really great. Really glad that we were introduced to them by Autumn.
Oh, wasn't Autumn great? Great energy, and really interesting to hear about what they do.
Yeah. So Autumn is the producer of Universal Erection, which is a night.
Where is it, Nathan?
It's at the Mascara Bar. Yeah. Anyway, it's a great night. It's a queer literary evening. I went along a few weeks ago to check it out. And actually heard this next poet reading, but I'm not going to introduce them. I am going to let Autumn do that.
I'm really excited to introduce Maheni now. She came and read at Universal Erection a couple of weeks ago, and you could have heard, no pressure on all of you, but you could have heard a pin drop in the room, and we're quite a rowdy night, so that's saying something. She's a fantastic poet. She's working on her first collection of poetry. I'm just going to introduce her onto the stage. Come on, give her the cheer!
I'm going to be doing 2 poems for you today, and the first one is called Cherry Coke. We laid our heads down together, slept on shoulders on the night bus. We clasped our hands together, tight, soothing ourselves at 2 a.m, playing tactical games of thumb war, soon to be at our stop. It's been a long night. We shared kisses in the smoking area, filtered our words through double rum and cokes, made light of our lives underneath the stars and between shivering cold. I held your heels for you to stumble barefoot to bathroom stall, swept coconut conditioned hair back from your face, told the girls you were going to be okay, told myself that this is what it takes to be with you. This is what friends do. You said I love you, say it back. I said, love isn't enough for nights like this. I said, only if you really mean it. I can't remember the last time I forgot your name, but I would do this for you over and over again. That's what.
That was Maheni K. Arthur reading Cherry Coke. Now, the first half of the show was closed by Keith Jarrett.
And didn't he dress for the weather?
He did. He was wearing his trademark shorts.
Brought his legs with him, didn't he?
He did. And his delightful poems, it has to be said. Keith's always a delight to listen to.
And to photograph. I could never tire of photographing that man. So expressive.
Yeah. As indeed was our second headline poet.
Yes. Well, Joelle is another one of my muses. I love photographing her. Both poets use their bodies in a very, physical, kinetic. Is that the right term?
Yeah. Kinetic, exactly. Yeah, it's interesting you should say that, because actually you'll hear that. We're going to hear Joelle reading a couple of extracts.
It's a shame you won't be able to see her.
No, I know, but you can hear her moving around, almost like this choreography in the background. You can hear her footsteps on the stage in the recording. So here is Joelle reading a couple of extracts from her T.S. Eliot and Polari Prize winning collection Canto and Other Poems.
Oh, big up, Ministers. How you doing? So, I'm a lesbian. Like my father. I'm a lesbian. And I wrote a book called Canto and Other Poems. During that time in the 80s when I came out, the most important word in that phrase was out. It wasn't something celebrated, there was no Instagram or social media, it just meant out. And you had a choice to make between your family and your school friends and yourself. So if you can imagine during a time of it was pre-Section 28, but pretty much Section 28. The only way we could survive was by leaving. We were grown up, particularly dykes. We grew up believing we were ugly, and then we were exiled by our communities. And then Jimmy Somerville, and then Andy Bell, and then Pete Burns, and that gave us courage and told us of the spaces to go. And so, like great big pink geese, lame geese, we flocked from all the little towns and we went to the cities, and it was really the space, not much bigger than this book, the volume of a book, between ugly and handsome, exile and belonging. So this is called Canto, and it's the story, really, of what happened. Some girls fall from sun-lit skies straight down into flat pack floral dresses, grab their smiles from a hook behind the door, rescue their faces from riptides of mirrors. Some girls are always falling. Round one, the body as battleground. You fall amidst your body entirely. Land somewhere in enemy territory behind the lines. Your body, a foreign country you cannot get a visa for. Your skin, a parachute caught in tree branches. You awaken in no man's land. Gunfire from over the horizon, and women are crucified on hashtags across the dark hills. Your trench, is crowded with dead women, wearing faces that try to escape them, and the clothes of someone you once knew. There are landmines buried deep beneath your skin, and no one understands them. In between the battle cry and the bedroom is this sticky quiet, this no man's land, and this is where you live. Men explode when you least expect it. All these lifetimes searching for body. Round 7. The body as uprising. Ah, you bayonet boys, you truncheon rob. My face doesn't fit my face, but your fist does. Years from now, no one will remember how we fought, how each bruised knuckle was a white boy's head bent in prayer. No one will remember the love, how alike it is to rage, how screams made corporeal are rainbowed, or how rainbows became corporate logos, or how we carved our epitaphs into stone walls. No one will remember unpicking acronyms by candlelight, so fuck it. I'll be in the back bar of heaven. Kaz! We'll be getting around in and releasing that laugh. Wild birds escaping her mouth. And none of this will matter. I'll be riding the ghost roads with Valentine. Bareback, knee clench on her Harley. I'll be scuffing the city with Dudzilly. Men will stare like open shaft mines. I'll be walking the white lines with Angel, tightrope, antelope heart. I can't remember the names of all my dead friends, but they're here now. Our grief, a leather jacket. Our laughter, static. As we fade to a sepia, the colour of blood mixed to water, disappearing down a plug hole, much like the meeting of our legs. Remember this. My whole life is a protest. Thank you.
That was Joelle Taylor performing at Stoke Newington Literary Festival. Now, on the opening night of the festival, we went to hear Juliet Jacques.
Oh, that was good. I was really looking forward to seeing Juliet talk to Peter.
Yeah, so that's Peter Ulrich, who was the original drummer with Dead Can Dance. Who you're a bit of a fan of.
Well, I introduced them to you, didn't I? I mean, we've been listening to Dead Can Dance for many, many years. Really love their work.
Juliet was asking the questions of Peter on that occasion. But of course, Juliet is a writer in her own right. There's her memoir, her book of short stories, collection of journalism.
And she also contributed to our anthology, didn't she? Mainstream. Brilliant story, Nathan.
Yeah, it is a fantastic story. Really interesting form and voice in the story. And you're going to hear Juliet now reading an extract from that story at the launch of the anthology back in 2021 at Above the Stag Theatre.
Thank you to Justin and Nathan for commissioning this story, which is called A Review of a Return. As the title implies, it's written as a film review of a film called A Return. When Syntagma Journal asked if I wanted to review J.G. Singer's new film, an hour-long walk through their hometown in Surrey shot on 16mm with Singer's narration and an ambient soundtrack, I was hesitant. I've long been interested in Singer's work, not so much because I share Spela Milanic's conviction, expressed in her review of Summer Days 2018, that Singer is the most promising queer experimental filmmaker in contemporary Europe, but because I knew Singer in our youth. That would not be a problem in many instances. I would happily interview Singer, who uses they-them pronouns, or include their work in any survey of recent queer film. But a review presents an ethical consideration, demanding objectivity as it does. In this case, I think it more interesting, and potentially productive, to write through this moral issue rather than to recoil from it, hence my accepting this commission. I hope that you, the reader, or listeners in this case, will indulge me, and I hope J.G. Singer will forgive me. With its title betraying the influence of great film diarists such as Jonas Mekas or David Perloff, A Return opens on a train. Set that up. The image flickers and fades in, awakening the viewer somewhere between Earlswood and Salfords on the London to Brighton line. With that characteristic 16mm light burn around the edges of the shot, Singer shows us the Royal Earlswood Hospital, or the Asylum for Idiots as it was called when it opened in 1853, the first purpose-built establishment for people with learning difficulties. Who knows how many horrors took place in this castle, reflects Singer, telling us about two cousins of the Queen who were hidden there and listed as dead in Burke's Peerage, decades before their actual deaths. Described by architectural critic Ian Nairn simply as not nice. The listed building looms over the surrounding countryside and now serves as luxury flats, of course, with a Union Jack flying over the top, of course. A whitewashing of a complicated past that perhaps reveals more about a return than Singer intended. The film really begins when Singer gets off at Hawley Station, offers glimpses of the private company logos, and reminisces about British Rail despite being too young to remember it. Unlike their early works about London, where Singer moved as soon as I legally could, for a degree at Goldsmiths, naturally, the narration does not strive too hard for the effect of Patrick Keeler, noting simply that history does not happen here. But there are personal histories, and people with histories, as A Return explores. The first of these is quite amusing. Singer sees a man sat in a car waiting outside the station, picking his nose, who they immediately recognise as Mr. Norton, who threatened to expel me in year 10 because he thought I'd put glue in his coffee. I hadn't, but I think he just never liked me because he thought I was too feminine and a bit of a smart-ass. Then a lament. So did everyone else. At this point, the man in the car realises he's being filmed and angrily turns towards the camera. The shot ends abruptly, most likely with Singer running away like a naughty schoolchild. There are a few establishing shots to tell us more about what kind of town this is. A large Waitrose and an old but well-maintained department store. A sign for Hawley Tire and Exhaust that may well have inspired the pun that begins Sheena Mackay's 1986 novel Red Hill Rococo, set in the next town to the north, where the protagonist sees Red Hill Tires and Exhausts from the train. And the Big Wetherspoons pub in what was once a grand cinema back in the 30s. So far, so unremarkable. Singer takes us to the secondary school, the only one in the town, to poke at their memory further, having already set up an unhappy time there with that earlier anecdote. It's break time. Children are eating, talking, playing football or basketball, with the 5-storey tower block that hosts the science labs looming over the playground like the Royal Earlswood over the neighbouring villages. Perhaps I could have given this life more of a chance, as my parents were always telling me to, Singer wonders over the noise. I'd made my mind up to leave before my first day here, and so I grew up in exile in the only place I've ever called home. The camera shakes. Perhaps Singer did not use a tripod, as they wanted to be able to get away quickly if seen shooting. But the jerky effect conveys two things. The first is that this is not a major work, but one made quickly and cheaply when more ambitious or elaborate filmmaking is impossible. The second is the nature of Singer's personality, at least as an adolescent. Jittery, anxious, trying to assert their own opinions, tastes and desires, while being deeply concerned with peer acceptance and struggling to work out how much of their gender nonconformity to display. We were in the same year at this school, both taking our GCSEs in 1998 and then going to Sixth Form College in Reigate before I moved to Brighton and Singer to London. Singer talks about alienation, boredom and loneliness, leading to a deep-seated depression. I recall these feelings well as we shared them. How could we not in a town like this, with its run-down high street, its lack of anything to do besides underage drinking and chasing the dragon at house parties, the constant fear of being beaten up by resentful teenagers with little to occupy them and less to hope for? Singer stops lingering on the playground and talks about the early 2000s, when they and other queer people took vicious abuse in a national moral panic that culminated in a mob in Newport driving a paediatrician out of her home, and an avalanche of complaints against Chris Morris's Brass Eye special on Channel 4, satirising the media's role in this campaign. They take a walk that we often did together, home from school, either over the rusty railway bridge or through the subway, which, Singer Riley tells us, inspired a song by local band The Cure that's 6 lines long. Wondering what became of the school bullies, and if they even want to know, Singer mentions a fight that they were supposed to have here 24 years ago with a boy from year 10 that I was later told got set up because I was, quote, bent. Wisely, Singer didn't show up, hiding at my house instead, not long after I'd become their only friend, and not long before I became rather more than that. Filming the trains from the bridge, Singer reflects on how often they left during their teens, partly because it was so easy to bunk the train fares back then, and on their permanent departure in 2000, which seemed to freeze the town's development in Singer's mind, almost as if it didn't exist when they weren't there. Hawley has changed, of course, but glacially compared to the nearest cities. Singer notes the Gatwick Islamic Centre, pointedly named after the nowhere place of the nearby airport, rather than a long-established town populated overwhelmingly by white middle-class people who always returned Conservative MPs and councillors, shown on a board in the centre. If Singer had kept up with local news, they might have heard about people vandalising the centre back in 2012 as worshippers observed Ramadan. They stop at a bookmaker's, which used to be a record shop in the 1990s, where the staff introduced us to the kind of artists whose work now make up the soundtrack for Singer's films: Ortega, Fenez, Mogwai, Underground Resistance, etc. Singer tells us briefly about The Only Thing in the Town I Ever Loved, and how it closed down when Tesco and then Amazon started selling CDs, and the shop couldn't keep flogging singles to kids on their way home from school to subsidise them selling weird electronic music to people like me. There's an air of smug superiority to this, coming from Singer's relief at successfully leaving a place without culture and becoming something like the person they wanted to be. They show us the old library, closed down and unoccupied, but not the larger one recently opened at the other end of the high street. But one doesn't have to know this to suspect that the filmmaker is more concerned with weaving a story about the self than about their surroundings. And if you want to know how the film ends, read and buy Mainstream. Thank you very much.
That was Juliet Jacques reading her short story, A Review of a Return. And we're going to stay at Above the Stag Theatre for this podcast's Queer Poet Past. And you'll hear me reading something from Audre Lourde.
Who was... she described herself as a black lesbian mother, warrior, poet. She dedicated her life and work to fighting racism, classism, sexism, homophobia, So Audre was born in New York and she died in 1992. And this is a litany for survival. For those of us who live at the shoreline, standing upon the constant edges of decision, crucial and alone. For those of us who cannot indulge the passing dreams of choice, who love in doorways, coming and going, in the hours between dawns, looking inward and outward, at once before and after, seeking a now that can breed futures, like bread in our children's mouths, so their dreams will not reflect the death of ours. For those of us who were imprinted with fear like a faint line in the center of our foreheads, learning to be afraid with our mother's milk, for by this weapon, this illusion of some safety to be found, the heavy-footed hoped to silence us. For all of us, this instant and this triumph, we were never meant to survive. And when the sun rises, we are afraid it might not remain. When the sun sets, we are afraid it might not rise in the morning. When our stomachs are full, we are afraid of indigestion. When our stomachs are empty, we are afraid we may never eat again. When we are loved, we are afraid love will vanish. When we are alone, we are afraid love will never return. And when we speak, we are afraid our words will not be heard or welcomed. But when we are silent, we are still afraid. So it is better to speak, remembering we were never meant to survive. Thank you.
That was Litany for Survival by Audre Lourde, which I read at our queer poetry soirée last May. And thank you for joining us for this June podcast.
Thanks, everyone.
So we'll be back on or around the last Thursday in July, and we're going to play out today with another track from Alienathan, which this one also appeared in our first book, Threads. This image, so you produced a photograph to go with each of the poems, and this one ended up being on the cover.
Yeah, turned you into a marionette, didn't I?
You did always enjoy pulling my strings.
Shame we couldn't have left you tied up.
And so we're going to say goodbye for now.
Goodbye.
And here is Suspended Animation. The bin in my kitchen needs emptying. The plates in my sink need washing. The floor in my bedroom needs hoovering. The sheets on my bed need changing. But not today, not today. I'll close my eyes and make them go away. From my bank needs balancing. A call on my phone needs taking. Another red letter needs answering, but not today, not today. I'll close my eyes and make them go away. Somewhere there's a life I should be living. Somewhere there's a wife I should be loving. Somewhere there's a God I should be praising. Somewhere there's a wage I should be earning, but not today, not today. I close my eyes and make them go away. Not today, not today. I'll close my eyes and make them go